Hey! Welcome back to Film Fix. This is the true story of Philippe Petit, a French high-wire walker who famously crossed between the Twin Towers in 1974. The tale begins in 1973 in the picturesque city of Paris. We meet Philippe Petit, a street performer who amazes crowds with his wire walking skills, despite not having a legal permit. Philippe always seeks new places to set up his wire and showcase his talent. One day, as Philippe is collecting tips from his audience, someone drops a hard candy into his hat. Ever the performer, Philippe starts doing tricks with the candy, eventually biting into it and hurting his teeth. In serious pain, he goes to see a dentist. While waiting, he reads a magazine and finds something so fascinating that he forgets his toothache. He sees a photo of the unfinished World Trade Center Twin Towers, set to be the tallest buildings in the world once completed. Inspired, Philippe tears out the page and dreams of stringing a wire between the towers and walking across it. We know Philippe is passionate about wire walking. But to understand why, we need to look at his childhood. At 8 years old, Philippe sneaked into a circus show in his town and saw a man wire walking for the first time. He was instantly captivated. After the show, he couldn't stop staring at the wire, wondering how it was possible. Determined to learn, he tied 5 ropes between 2 trees and practiced walking on them. As he grew older and more skilled, he reduced the number of ropes until he could walk on just 1. But he still wondered if he could walk on wires high in the air. So, he sneaked into the circus and tried to walk the wire. Just as he was about to take his first step, an old man shouted at him to get down. This man was Papa Rudy, the head of the circus. Philippe came down and impressed Papa Rudy with his talent, who then decided to mentor him. Papa Rudy invited Philippe to his home, where they discussed stage presence and audience respect. During the conversation, Philippe made the mistake of calling himself an artist rather than a circus clown. Offended, Papa Rudy threw him out. Despite his parents' objections, Philippe leaves his home and everything behind to chase his dreams. This is how he ends up in Paris. While searching for a place to perform, he encounters a girl named Anne playing her guitar on the street. Philippe decides to showcase his talents right there. Before long, all the bystanders are watching him, leaving Anne without an audience. Anne confronts Philippe afterward, and he defends himself by saying he was just trying to share the crowd. After their argument, it starts raining. Philippe grabs his bag, takes a restaurant umbrella, and walks with Anne. Philippe suggests they go for a drink in exchange for his promise not to perform near her again. While having drinks, Philippe shares his dream of wire walking on the tallest building in the world. As they get to know each other better, they fall in love, and Anne invites him to her art school to practice. Philippe begins wire walking at higher heights. One day, a photographer named Jean-Louis notices Philippe and asks to take his picture. Philippe agrees and tells him about his dream of walking between the Twin Towers. Jean-Louis is impressed by Philippe's bold ambition, and Philippe offers him the role of his official photographer. As Philippe talks about his dream, he is jolted back to reality when the ropes tied to the trees loosen, causing him to fall. Jean-Louis reminds him that a mistake like this in New York could be fatal. To learn more about securing ropes, Philippe returns to Papa Rudy. He offers to pay for lessons on wire walking. Papa Rudy accepts and takes him under his wing. Philippe learns rope tying and travels with Papa Rudy as his assistant for shows. Though not allowed to perform during shows, Philippe is given a chance to practice on the wire afterward. Impressed by his dedication, Papa Rudy lets him perform at a small town festival. Philippe attempts to wire walk over a lake, but the fisherman's heckling distracts him. In front of Anne, Jean-Louis, Papa Rudy, and the festival crowd, Philippe falls into the lake. Embarrassed and determined to succeed, Philippe decides to wire walk between the towers of Notre Dame. With Jean-Louis' help, Philippe sneaks into the cathedral and sets up steel walk ropes between the towers. He performs his stunt early in the morning in front of many tourists and completes the walk successfully. The crowd cheers, but since his act was illegal, he is caught by the police. The newspapers label Philippe a vandal, but in the same paper, he sees a picture of the Twin Towers. He takes it as a sign and believes he is destined to wire walk between them. He and Anne travel to New York to see the towers up close. Seeing the tower's height scares Philippe, making him doubt the feasibility of hanging the wire. However, he sneaks up via the construction elevator to the unfinished observation deck. Walking over a beam, he gains confidence that he can achieve his dream. He goes back to France and starts figuring out the details of his daring plan. Anne and Jean-Louis agree to help, but they're worried about setting up the walking cable so high without them wobbling. To solve this, Philippe consults Papa Rudy, who shows him the proper way to install the ropes and suggests he use a safety harness. As an experienced wire walker, Papa Rudy doesn't want to see Philippe get hurt. However, Philippe rejects the safety harness idea, feeling it would ruin the challenge. After a brief argument, Papa Rudy supports Philippe and returns his money to fund the plan. Philippe starts training to get used to the strong winds he'll face on the Twin Towers. Jean-Louis introduces him to Jeff, a mathematician who offers to help with important calculations for the plan. Jean-Louis also shows how they'll use archery to get the ropes across the towers. Everything seems to be falling into place for Philippe. He sets August 6, 1974, as the day for his attempt and flies back to New York with his team to gather information about the building and its workers, and to take necessary measurements. Philippe visits the towers in various disguises. To measure the exact distance between the towers, he pretends to be a reporter from France and directly asks the construction managers. Things are going smoothly until one day, disguised as an architect, Philippe steps on a nail, injuring his foot. Despite being unable to walk for a few days, he doesn't let this setback hinder his plans. He returns to the towers on crutches the next day, collecting more vital information. Then, he meets a man named Barry who recognizes him as the famous wire walker from France. Barry works on the 87th floor of the North Tower. Realizing Barry's potential help, Philippe invites him to dinner and reveals his plan. Impressed by Philippe's determination, Barry agrees to help him access the North Tower's roof. With most of the plan in place, Philippe and his team need a walkie-talkie to communicate without the police overhearing. Jean-Pierre helps by providing a wired radio and introduces Philippe to two more helpers, Albert and David, who will assist in setting up the wires. With the team assembled and the plan ready, Philippe has one day left before his big walk on the Twin Towers. The night before, he struggles to sleep and starts hammering a crate for his walking cables, imagining it as his coffin. The next day, Philippe and his team head to the World Trade Center. With Barry's help, Albert and Jean-Louis gain access to the North Tower with their gear. Philippe kisses Anne goodbye and joins the others in a delivery van to enter the South Tower. Disguised as delivery workers, they ride the elevator to the 110th floor. As they unload the walking cables, they hear security guards approaching, causing David to panic and run away. Philippe and Jeff hide under a tarp that, unfortunately, is covering an elevator shaft. They cling to it for dear life, waiting for the guards to leave. After hours of waiting, Philippe starts hallucinating that Jeff has fallen. He snaps back to reality and notices the guards are gone. They quickly crawl out from under the tarp and carry the walking cables to the top floor. Philippe signals to Jean-Louis on the other tower to shoot the arrow to connect the cables between the two towers. Jean-Louis shoots the arrow, but Philippe can't find it. He searches frantically until he sees it hanging over the side of the roof. Just as it's about to fall, he catches it. Using the arrow, they first connect the wired radio and communicate with each other. Next, they start laying the wires between the South and North Towers. Dawn is approaching, and they are still not done. Albert, on the North Tower, quits, afraid of getting caught. Jean-Louis tells Philippe that Albert has a camera and plans to sell pictures of what they are doing. Even with Albert bailing, Philippe remains hopeful they can finish before sunrise. He continues working on his side while Jean-Louis works on his. Anne and Jean-Pierre watch from below as the wires are tied. Just as they finish, a mysterious man appears on the roof. He looks at Philippe's setup and nods approvingly. Philippe walks back, and Jeff points out that the man had a steel pipe. Maybe he approved of Philippe's staring stun, or maybe he was scared. Philippe says in his narration that he never saw the man again and calls him the mysterious visitor. With everything ready, Philippe starts putting on his costume, but part of it falls from the tower. Angry and disheartened, he doesn't want to perform anymore. However, seeing his accomplice's face, Philippe decides to go on. As the sun rises, he grabs his balancing pole and steps onto the wire. Each step brings him closer to his dream. His friends watch from below, and Anne gathers everyone's attention to Philippe. Halfway across, Philippe gains confidence and smiles. He reaches the North Tower, completing the stunt to the applause from below. Yet, even after achieving his dream, Philippe feels a pull from the other tower. He decides to walk back to the South Tower. This time, his steps are more confident, and he even kneels on the wire. As he nears the South Tower, two police officers arrive to arrest him once he steps off the wire. Philippe decides to turn back and heads for the North Tower again, breaking the most crucial rule of wire walking. He looks down at his audience and enjoys the moment. Soon, more police officers show up at both towers. Ignoring them, Philippe begins to walk back and forth on the wire. The officers try to persuade him to come down, but Philippe feels his performance isn't over yet. He continues to walk and perform various tricks. A helicopter is even dispatched to get him to stop. Philippe returns to the South Tower and finally decides to end his act. He steps off the wire and calmly surrenders to the police. The large crowd watching him cheers, and his friends breathe a sigh of relief. As the police escort him away, the construction workers applaud. Despite his arrest, the officers are also impressed by his feat. News of his wire walking between the Twin Towers spreads worldwide, bringing Papa Rudy to tears. After being released, Philippe celebrates with his friends. He thanks them for believing in him and supporting his dream. Unfortunately, Anne decides to return to France to pursue her own dreams. For his remarkable accomplishment, he is given a lifetime pass to the tower's observation deck, which he visits many times. Turn on alerts, like, and subscribe to Film Fix for more videos similar to this one. Thank you for watching.